Well, Big Pharma's at it again. We heard how the maker of a fentanyl mouth spray was put down a $500,000 to lobby against the legalization measure that's on the ballot in Arizona. All right, here we have another situation where Big Pharma is basically using the money that they make off of these over, ramped up pricing on their pills. Well, they take those enormous profits and instead of paying people to do good work, and they don't really hire nobody, they're just family owned businesses, and they basically just keep all their money to themselves and spend it on advertising, obviously. If you turn on the TV sometime, you'll see what I'm talking about. That's all you see is pharmaceutical commercials, one after another. And if you get a break from them, it's usually some class action lawsuit suing one of these pills. Anyway, Tess Owen wrote an article called Big Pharma is spending millions to fight limits on opioids like Oxycontin, Vicodin, and fentanyl. Now, what do you mean limits? Well, there's limits. Limits on manufacturing, limits on prescribing. People are strictly prescribed by the milligram doses in some situations. All right, let's read it. The pharmaceutical industry has spent more than $880 million over the past decade to fight laws that would limit the availability of powerful opiates such as Oxycontin, Vicodin, and fentanyl in the United States, according to an investigation by the AP and the Center for Public Integrity, which was published last Sunday. Often these lobbying expenditures are funneled through groups like the American Cancer Society, Cancer Action Network, and other advocacy groups that represent the interests of patients with terminal cancer or chronic pain whose condition can be alleviated by taking opioids. While opioids are critical for cancer patients and those in terminal pain, opioid abuse, including heroin and prescription drugs, have been called the worst epidemic in American history. Numbers of overdose deaths have been rising in tandem with the booming sales of the drugs. On an average day in the United States, roughly 129 people die from opioid-related overdoses, according to the White House. Woo! So that sounds like about 3 school buses full of people die every day from opiates in the United States. That's just overdoses. 129 per day. Do you think we'd have different opinions about opiates if you seen 3 school buses a day on CNN, like they showed you the video of it, just like driving right off a cliff, and then they showed you down at the bottom when the buses hit, and then all the people that were in them just like flying out the windows into pieces and stuff? You think that might have an effect on how we look at those orange bottles and those little pills? Because right now it looks like people just look at that shit as if it's candy. And unfortunately, people get addicted to these things, and next thing you know it, they don't have the money for them, because these pills are not cheap. And when you run out of money for the pills, then you go to the street, and what you find there is heroin. Heroin is cheaper, but if you get a bad heroin habit, now it's more expensive. And now you're using needles, and it's just way more addictive than any other opiate. Well, I'm not going to say that. It's not even as strong as fentanyl. But just the whole ritual of shooting up and all that stuff, it's like that's an addictive thing in the nature of heroin that you don't really get from pills. So, well, anyway, let's just finish it up. Big Pharma spending on political contributions and lobbying has been targeted on limits being placed on prescribing opiates to doctors. To put the numbers into context, AP and the Center of Public Integrity found that the pharmaceutical industry had spent 8 times more than the gun lobby during that same period from 2006 to 2015. Lawmakers interviewed for the story attributed the failure of the bills that they had pushed to stem the flow of opiates to the aggressive lobbyists working on behalf of those pharmaceutical companies. So basically they're saying, they were pushing, but the other people were more aggressive and more pushy and had more money to throw around. What we're talking about here is we're not just talking about K Street in Washington. We're talking about every state capital has these pharmaceutical lobby, these pill company lobbyists hanging around doing damage all the time. And then they also contribute to the campaigns for people running for office, whether it be local people all the way up to national people, depending on what they need on a local level. You know, they might even have like somebody in a local municipality that has certain controls over certain FCC regulations that they want to change. You don't know. I mean, they're fighting battles on multiple fronts. We've seen where they're fighting against legalizing marijuana on several fronts and with different various means and mechanisms. But we're here now and we're looking at what they've done to this country. They've literally basically pushed it so that the opiates are in many different flavors, many different name brands now. But you have the main things like the fentanyl, the hydrocodone, the oxycontin, and then the actual street stuff and the dilaudid, the heroin. The heroin that we are in Afghanistan with our military guarding poppy fields for warlords and Taliban warlords and what have you, because you know, two enemies are only enemies until a shared economic interest is something that they're protecting together, and that's kind of what the union there is. I mean, we're talking about just the heroin production. That's what the poppy fields in Afghanistan do. All these other opiates, I don't even know where they grow these plants, but they all come from plants, right? Now, an example of this, just one little example, and if you watch my channel and see all my videos or kind of follow what I'm talking about here and there, I kind of do reoccurring themes, and it's not my fault. It's because these same dirty people are always involved doing the same dirty things in this drug war. And in this case, we have the Purdue Pharma company, who are the makers of Oxycontin with an N, Oxycontin. I can never say it right, but they pled guilty in 2007 to charges that it misrepresented the drug as abuse resistance as part of a multi-million-dollar marketing campaign. Purdue was forced to pay a hefty $600 million in fines. That's not hefty to them because, as I reported before, the one family that owns Purdue Pharma is worth $16 billion, and I guarantee you Oxycontin is their number one moneymaker. And I guarantee you $600 million to them is a drop in the bucket. It ain't nothing. It's not even one of those billions, and they got 16 of them. And this is, it ain't like they lose a lot of money. They make more money. Every year they're making billions of dollars in revenue. Who knows how much of that they can retain? But there's other companies spending on levels all the way down to city council and all the way up to owning entire countries' governments. So that's what we're up against in the drug war. These people don't want to have people out there doing kratom. They don't want people out there smoking marijuana and not getting cancer. They want people getting cancer, and they want people getting their medicine for the cancer. And you can take the cancer and just put any word you want in there, diseases that have sprung up in mass over the last 100 years. And isn't it all a coincidence that over the last 100 years, when the pharmaceutical industry boomed after making marijuana illegal, which also was called cannabis back before it was called marijuana, and when it was called cannabis, it was the number 1, the number 2, and the number 3 most prescribed medicine for nearly 40 years. But then the pharmaceutical families came in, Park Davis and others. They decided, you know what, we're going to buddy up with the petrochemical industry, and who knows what a beautiful, harmonious relationship we could have with them.